right, hello everyone. Thanks for coming again. So I think I am just going to dive into the gradebook. Let me get my screen share going. Might have to switch this between a couple windows a couple different times, but we'll get there. All right. So here we go. All right, so I am signed into Courseware right now as an instructor, so the view that you are all used to seeing all the time. And what I'm going to do is first, I'm actually going to ignore my course that I helpfully labeled for this webinar and go to a different one. And so the important thing about this course for me is that it has more than 50 students in it, which is not something we usually run into on the development team, but is very important for many of you who have larger sections of your anatomy classes. And it's really important for showing the first set of updates I want to talk about, which are all about navigating around the gradebook. And so these were some of our most requested feature updates and improvements, our most requested bugs to be fixed. So I'm going to cover those first. And the first thing I want to cover is scrolling. So that's probably the most complained about thing about the gradebook was the fact that the horizontal scroll bar to go back and forth was always at the bottom. And so it's a little hard for me to demo because I'm on a Mac, but you can see now, if I can get it to stay, right, I have this scroll bar that appears even though I am nowhere near the bottom of this gradebook. So I can grab that and scroll at any point. If I scroll further down, you can still see it, find it, use it to scroll horizontally. So hopefully that will make everyone's lives much easier. Another tip for scrolling in the gradebook is as long as you've clicked somewhere in this gradebook window, you should also be able to use your arrow keys on your keyboard. So you can scroll up and down using the arrow keys as well as left and right. And that should be helpful for those of you who maybe have trouble grabbing the scroll bar. I don't know. All sorts of weird things can happen with your computer, or if you don't like to use a mouse. And so those are two big improvements that we've made. And one other thing that you'll want to notice with the scrolling is that we have this first sticky row or this first sticky column of students. We had this before, but I wanted to let you know that it's still there, even though we've updated the rest of the scrolling. And also we've additionally added this sticky row at the top. So if you scroll down, even though I'm now down at, students 35 through 42 in my gradebook, I can still see the name of the assignment and the name of the quiz that got assigned at the top. So that should help a lot with keeping track of where you are and just moving around through all of these many columns and rows of grades. All right, and so an additional thing here is those of you who have 50 students or more might know that we do eventually send you onto a second page, just so you're not totally overwhelmed by the number of students and assignments in here. And so one thing that was a frequent complaint was that if you wanted to modify any of these grades or any of these assignments for an individual student, it would always kick you out of here and bring you back to the first page and the top left. And so we've made some improvements there. So I'm going to just scroll all the way over to the right, and I'm going to grab one of these. I'm going to change this grade. We'll do a 10 out of 11. That seems fair. And so you'll see I stayed exactly where I was. I'm still on that second page of the gradebook, and this grade has been changed, and I'm still scrolled all the way over to the right as well. So if you have this sequence of changes that you need to make, or you need to extend a bunch of due dates all in a row for one student who's maybe missed some time, that should make it a lot easier to do that. It also works in the individual student view. So if you click on one of these student names, I'll go find myself so I'm not sending a bunch of other people email. So most of these are just made up. Oh, am I not in this course? Okay, I'm just going to pick person at random. All right, so you can see the same thing here. I can scroll down and I'm in this view. And before, if I made a change here, it would kick me back to that page again. And so what I can do is I can change grade again, myself or whoever this is, an 85, save it, and I stay again on the same spot in the same view, much smoother sailing, no, not so much being kicked around from place to place. And then you'll also probably notice that this gradebook just looks a little bit different. Our columns are now much narrower, and so that's so you can see so many more of these at once. So I'm on a pretty big screen and I can see 6 across, even though my window is actually only about 2/3 the size of my whole screen right now. So that's a huge boost for anyone trying to really get a snapshot view of how your students are doing across lots of assignments that have been completed. And so these are all now narrower columns, and there's a couple ways that we made it a little easier to do these narrower columns. Before, you would have seen these names stretching out so that they took up all of the space that they needed. And now everything gets this little ellipse if it's too long. It wraps to two lines. And then there's this, we call these tooltips, this hover state that brings the full title into view. So whenever you mouse over these, you'll see the full title of any of your quiz names and of any of your assignment names. So like this one gets a little cut off funny. Right, so I can see that this is actually taste and smell dissection, not just taste and smell, which might be important. And then another thing we did to make these columns smaller is we removed a little bit of information. So before on Courseware in, about a month ago, 2 months ago, before we did our first set of gradebook updates, there was some information here that had the time that your student's attempt was submitted and its duration. And so we removed that from this view because it didn't really seem like it was needed at a glance. And it's in 2 other places now. So if I click on the arrow for this and I view all of the attempts, now I can see, okay, it was submitted on the 20th and it was a really short attempt, 1 second. That happens a lot when the developers are testing things. And so that's a huge update, and you can still see that information here, which it's been there all along, but it's not here. It is now in this view. And the other spot where it is actually is if I just click on this grade and I bring up, oh no, this grade is broken. Oh, I love it when that happens during a demo. All right, we're gonna go to a different course where we weren't using it for testing. Let's see, what do I got? All right, here we go. So if I open this one, so I'm just clicking on this grade that's here and I can see the detailed information. So this also has the time when the grade was submitted and the duration of the attempt. Another developer attempt, only 6 seconds. And so you can see that information all the time if you click on the grade or if you use the drop down and then view all the quiz attempts. And if there are multiple attempts here, well, that's a weird one. This is what you get to see when you're in an employee account, all the weird things that we've broken and then fixed over time. So multiple attempts here, and you can see the timing and the duration for multiple attempts at the same time as well. But if I click here, I'll just see it for the main attempt. Even shows up for the short answer quizzes once those have been graded. All right. So that pretty much covers our navigation improvements. Does anyone have any questions on moving around in the gradebook or anything like that?
Not so far, but we might want to wait a few seconds just in case anybody has any last second questions before we move on.
Perfect, I can drink water.
And apologies if you can hear the wind behind me. It is a little wild. No, I think we're good.
All right.
Let's push on.
Perfect. In that case, I will start talking about some improvements we've made to the status and grade display in the gradebook. So this is where my the course that I made that's titled for the webinar is actually relevant. So we've, just so everyone knows, a lot of these things you won't really see or notice a big difference, but we notice a big difference on our end. And it's just that everything's been made much more consistent on the back end. And that should make all of the grades that are displaying in your gradebook and all of the statuses of them just much more consistent. And so there's a couple specific ways that I can show you that and what we've been doing. So the first thing is I'm going to go in here, and you can see I just have myself as a student in this course. And I have a few assignments, and this one looks like it's in progress. So if I go and I look at it, I can say the student is actively taking this quiz or currently taking this quiz. And that's a little funky because I can tell you I'm not currently taking this quiz. And the thing with this is the only way that this can happen now is if there were connection problems while the student closed the quiz. And we've actually built in a way that your students can clear out this status if they get stuck here and if they did have connection problems. And so I'm going to swap to my student account to show you how I can clear this out. All right. So now I am signed in as a student instead. You can see I have the same thing where it's stuck in progress, and I'm like, no, it's not in progress anymore. I'm not taking this quiz. And so I can actually go in and I can open this quiz again because I have multiple attempts. So this is one good reason why you sometimes might want to give students multiple attempts on something that's a low pressure quiz. And I can start my quiz. And then now I'm gonna go and I'm gonna actually look at my gradebook. So started it, and you can see that actually my last attempt that I did previously has now cleared out and completed itself because I've started that new attempt. And so that's one easy way that your students can clear these out if they have problems. And I can go in and I can view it. And I can see, okay, I have a new attempt in progress, right? That makes sense. And I have this existing one that I took before where I got disconnected and I had to close my tab, and Courseware had no idea that I closed my tab because I wasn't connected to the internet or because I wasn't connected to Courseware properly. And so now if I go back, I can just take my quiz as normal. Let's see, maybe I can get all of these right. I have no idea if the ear is considered axial or appendicular. All right, I got it right. And so I'm not actually going to retake my quiz right now. So now if I refresh my gradebook, you can see that my last attempt, the one that was in progress before, is now complete, and I got all 3 questions right. And I can still go in and I can see that previous attempt that I took that got stuck. And so that's one easy way that your students can hopefully clear out these quizzes that get stuck. Just take another attempt and get all the way through. And since it's likely that they got disconnected part way through, they'll probably want that extra attempt anyway and might come bugging you for it if they had a connection problem. All right, and then one other thing to show is that we have actually improved that in progress. So you're actually less likely to get it now. It really only shows up if there's a connection problem. And so I'll open this new quiz that I've never taken before. Wait for it to load. I always take longer on Zoom. All right. So I can start my quiz. Now it should be in progress. I'll go check my gradebook just so I can show you. Right, so this new quiz is in progress now. And then previously, here, I'll answer a couple of questions first. Maybe I can even get one. That's part of the aortic valve. Here's a ventricle. I don't remember which of the other which valve this one is, so I'm just going to pick something completely wrong so that I know I'm getting it wrong. And a pulmonary valve. And then I'm like, oh wait, I'm late. I gotta go. Can't finish my quiz. And so I'm going to close it. I'm going to be like, yep, sorry, have to leave, can't finish it. And then I'll refresh my gradebook and we can see my quiz details here and that everything closed properly. So before in Courseware, we just had no idea when a student was closing that tab, even if they were still connected properly. And so now we're able to detect that and we can reflect properly that they've closed it, saying they're done with their attempt, basically. And that will appear properly in the gradebook. So I can go and I can see the details that oh, right, I got these 3 right, or I got 3 of these right, I got 1 wrong, and then this one I just didn't answer because I didn't get to it. And so those details will show up for any of those that are closed partway through their attempt. And hopefully that will solve a lot of the grade reporting problems that people do occasionally, or did occasionally have. Oh, and just the one other thing to note was that in progress message has changed. So that one I was showing you before for it being in progress, which of course now I've closed things and I can't show you that it was there. But that message now says that the student is actively taking the quiz. So that's what that status is supposed to mean. And if a student lets you know, hey, I'm not actually actively taking this quiz, and it says that I am, that's a good indication to you that they probably had some sort of connection issue. I know sometimes it's hard to weasel out exactly what the student, what happened to them, because they don't necessarily know exactly what went wrong. All right, so does anyone have questions on the status display? I know I showed you a lot of this in the student gradebook, but those are also all consistently appearing in the instructor gradebook too.
No, it doesn't look like it, but I just wanted to reiterate what I had written in the chat. We do have some newer users of Courseware among us. So in tomorrow's follow-up email, I will be giving some tips and tricks and some support articles that I think would really be helpful for our newer users. So keep an eye out for that.
And if we have time at the end, I can also answer some more questions about more basic gradebook functionality too. All right, so I really just have like one other small thing to show, and then we can swap over to some questions. So let me swap my screen share again, back to my instructor account. All right, so there's just a couple other little things, which I'll go back to that giant course to show you. We did get one of our complaints that especially affected users using the export CSV for their Canvas or Blackboard or other LMS grade, so that they could transfer things from this Courseware Gradebook to those LMS gradebooks, was an issue with the alphabetization of the students in the gradebook. And so we have fixed a couple of issues that were coming up there. One where students who maybe didn't capitalize their names the way they potentially should when making their accounts were actually being alphabetized separately from students who maybe had the same name or the same last name, but with a capital letter. So we fixed that, so that should all be set. And also students with the same last name should now be alphabetized correctly. Before it was a little funky that it was in order of when they joined the course. And so now you can see that they're in alphabetical order here by first name, if they have the same last name. And then we also made just so you know, that's been updated both in the gradebook and in the class roster on the left hand here. I can show you these same students in order. And then also in the CSV exports. So those should all be exporting kind of with the order that you would expect. And that makes it easy for import into your LMS. And then the other thing is we realized that our text at the top here was not always appearing correctly. If you did have more than 50 students, it was still saying that 50 were enrolled because that was how many were appearing on this page. And now it's showing your total enrollment next to that. So you get we're showing 50, but there are 75 total. And if I go to the next page, then it'll say, okay, showing the last 25 out of 75 total. And just in case people don't know, this also nicely updates when you search. So if I search for Black to find all of my students with the last name Black, it'll say, okay, I'm showing 5 out of the total 75. Just a nice additional thing there. And this text also appears in the roster and has been updated there as well. And so those are kind of the last 2 little things that I wanted to show. Does anyone have any general questions about the Gradebook about anything I've talked about?
We do have a question from Reese. When will the gradebook be synced with the Canvas gradebook?
So I know that work is planned to start on that very soon. I don't have an estimate for when it's going to be done.
As soon as that update is available, Reese, we will send out an announcement about it.
Oh, definitely.
So and when will it be synced with Blackboard?
After Canvas, that's part 2, as far as I know. I'm not on the team working directly on either of those. Any other questions?
Do we have any other questions? Even basic questions about the gradebook. Canvas Sync is in progress. Yes, so I know that they're going to be starting on that syncing very soon. It's the next big update. So yes, Gail, but like we said, we don't have an estimate for when that will be released, but just keep your eyes peeled and periodically reach out to your rep for an update. But as soon as that is available, we will announce it. And from Larry, I use D2L. Can we export that? Can we export that or to that or CSV?
Yes, so there is a CSV here for D2L. So you should be able to get one there that is formatted in a way that it should be easy to upload for you. As far as I know, there's no grade syncing planned for that, but there may eventually be the kind of single sign-on at some point. I have no idea what the date for that one would be.
After Blackboard, I would assume.
Yeah, I think after Blackboard.
And from Luis, who thinks all of these updates are great, but he cannot tell if the total points column got updated.
We have not made any updates to how we're calculating the total points column. This is something Luis and I have talked about before. Which is there are a few people actually who've requested that we have this total points calculated out of things that are completed or things that are that the due date has passed so far, rather than out of everything in the course, even if the due date hasn't passed or the student hasn't tried it yet. And we haven't made that update yet, but it is on our list.
Any other questions for Robin? We can also end this a little early if nobody has any further questions. Charles just came in. So our previous webinars recorded and are available for review. They are. So I am actually going to pop those links into the chat and I'm going to include them in tomorrow's follow-up email. When you get an invite, from me or anybody on the team for these webinars, they're usually in that email as well. So, but we keep them all on our YouTube channel. And I am going to pop those into the chat right now. So here you go. So here are our webinars. And also our office hours, which are a little bit different from our webinars. For anybody who doesn't know, these are hosted by instructors who are users of Courseware. And it's kind of like an Ask Me Anything. And some, have small presentations. Some are just Q&A. So if you're looking for ways to, incorporate Courseware into your classes, new ideas for lecture and lab, office hours would be a great place to kind of dig around.
Yes, we definitely have some excellent people who have very creative ways of using courseware in their classes.
And for anybody who joined after we began, I had already said, but Luis Rosado, who is attending this webinar at the moment, is actually going to be hosting our next one on August 5th. So I will be sending out an invite for that. It's going to be a good one. So highly encourage you to attend. That's right, Louise, no pressure. Any other questions? Even just basic courseware questions that Robin, could answer for you? Resource links. Yes, and Gail, I will be including many more resource links in tomorrow's follow-up email, so keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, we can end this a little bit early. That is totally okay. So, all right. So keep an eye out for tomorrow's email, which will include a link to this recording, as well as a bunch of follow-up items, some tips and tricks as promised, for using the gradebook, which will be good for our newer users, and a few other goodies that I'll include. And keep an eye out for the invite for next week's webinar, where Luis will be showing some very interesting results and data from a study that he did with his students. So it's going to be awesome. And I hope to see you there. But otherwise, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Bye.